Lesson 6.3, Solving Quadratic Equations by Factoring, takes us from approximating our solutions by graphing and finding out exactly what the solutions are by factoring. So our first step here is to set a quadratic equal to 0. So for our first one, A, we're going to set everything equal to 0 by moving the negative 4x to the left side. That will give us x squared plus 4x equals 0. Now if this were a trinomial, we would factor it. But it's a binomial. So our first thing to look at is it a difference of two squares, which it is not, or is there something in common you can factor out? In this case, they both have an x. If we factor out an x, we will get x plus 4. Now we're going to use the zero product rule then to find out what our solutions are. The zero product rule says that if you have something times something, in this case A times B, and you get 0 for an answer, then either A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0 or both. So when we look to solve this question, we say, what can I plug into x to make that a 0? The 0 is it. For the second piece, we say, what can I plug into x in this case to get that whole piece in the parentheses equal to 0? If you're adding 4 to it, you'd start with a negative 4. And that, or these, are our two solutions. The next one over here, we have again a quadratic, but we have two things on the right side. And I am going to move both of them to the left side. That would give us 3x squared. We subtracted the 5x from both sides, and we subtracted the 2. Now this is a trinomial, so we would want to factor it. Now this would be a trial and error method of factoring, or you can change the equation to have 4 terms, and then you could factor by grouping. That's something we won't talk about at this time. Another method yet to be learned. But we do know it's 3x and x. We have a minus minus, and that means a plus minus. Now I'm going to go plus minus and see how this works. And I'm going to plug in, see, a 2 and a 1. So I'll go like this, and I think this one should work. We FOIL, we do the outside and inside terms, we get 3x times negative 2, so negative 6x. Inside is a positive x, so together you get negative 5x, and that's what you want. So that one works. Now how do we find our solutions here? Well, again we ask ourselves, what can we plug into x for this parentheses that will cause it to be 0 after you subtract 2 from it? And that would be a positive 2. The second one, because the x coefficient here is not a 1, it's not quite as obvious. It's not as difficult as it may seem, but really all we're asking ourselves is, how do we get 3x minus 1 to become a 0? And the simple way to solve that is just to actually write it out as an equation. How can we get 3x plus 1 to equal 0? And then it's just a matter of solving for x. Divide by 3. So the other one is negative 1/3. Now this is an example of having two answers for a quadratic. Now, just for clarification, roots are also considered to be called zeros, which are also considered to be solutions. And when they are set equal, when you have an equation set equal to 0, these are also called the x-intercepts. So these four terms represent the same thing. So these are examples of having two roots, or two solutions. And we also have what's called a double root, a double solution. If you go through the same process here, you'll get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. This one is factorable. We get x and x. Minus plus is a minus minus. Factors of 9 that give us a sum of 3. A sum of 6. So we have 3 and 3. Now when we ask ourselves, what can we plug into x here to make it 0? 3 is the answer for the first one. And it happens to be that 3 is the answer for the second one. These are considered double roots. Now if you were to graph this, it would only intersect the x-axis at one point, 3. But when you solve it by factoring, you get 2 of them. So the way they reference this is to say 3 is a double root. Now what is the positive solution of the equation 2x squared minus 8x minus 42 equals 0? Now thus far we've solved and we haven't cared about what kind of answer we've gotten. But sometimes they have a question like this where they say, what's the positive solution? So they're just being more picky. And before I factor this, we should always get in the habit of asking ourselves, if I look at the equation, are they all divisible by anything? Do they have anything in common? And in this case, a 2. So if I divide everything by a 2, I would get x squared minus 4x minus 21. Factored, x minus minus is a plus minus, and 7 and 3 are factors of 21 that have a difference of 4. 4 is negative, so the bigger of the two numbers should be negative. When we solve, we get negative 3 and positive 7. And since they want the positive solution, we'd say 7. Our last question here is to ask ourselves, if we have the answers, how can we get the equation? Well, we know the answers come from factored form, and we know that the answers are the opposite of what we get as solutions. So if it was a 6, then it must have been x minus 6. If it was a negative 2/3, then it must have been a positive 2/3. Now, there's a couple ways to go from here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and FOIL. If we FOIL, we will get x squared minus 6x plus 2/3 x and minus, that would be 4. Combine like terms, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to multiply everything by a 3. The reason we're going to do that is because we want to get rid of a fraction. If we distribute that, we will get 3x minus 18x, 3x squared, plus 2x minus 12. And I am out of time here, so I'm going to stop it here, and then we will consider this part A, but we're almost done.